Welcome back to NASCAR Lap by Lap with me, Garon Bach. We're going to take a look back at the Michigan International Speedway weekend, the Firekeeper Casino 400. Look ahead at the Mexico City weekend, and then joining me shortly will be Wally Dallenbach Jr. And I'm very excited to have him on. But first, let's go ahead and get right into the Michigan results. So Denny Hamlin was your race winner. Not shocked by that, not surprised by that. It's the kind of stuff he does, comes in late, and will always be able to find a way to win, regardless of what the strategy is, regardless of where he is. He's been fast the past couple of weekends, and it kind of sucks as a fan because we're having to wait on him to see when is his wife going to be able to have their newborn. It's a long wait, and it's tedious now at this point. It's going to most likely impact the Mexico City traveling plans. I'm pretty sure he shared that he may not go if there's no new update because of the logistics that may be involved. So if you're a Denny Hamlin fan, you get to relish on this win for another week, and that will be a good sign for you and the Joe Gibbs Racing community right there. For the other Toyota fans here, look at the top four. 3 out of 4 drivers were Toyota manufactured vehicles. You got Bubba Wallace, Ty Gibbs, and Denny Hamlin. Those 3 drivers, all 3, Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace really needed the good days. Denny Hamlin didn't, but he's now tied himself up there with 3 wins, matching Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson. But for the Ty Gibbses and the Bubba Wallaces now, it's a good weekend, good points weekend. Bubba Wallace was someone who was starting to sink down in the playoff points, looking almost at going below the cutoff line, but a 40-point weekend, the second highest points earned of the weekend. Never going to complain about that. And Ty Gibbs is one of the 3 drivers I highlighted on Sunday as a winless driver in the Cup Series, but had a good day. Another one of those drivers was Shane Van Gisbergen that I highlighted down in 18th. Now, I'll highlight him later. I'll touch on him later when it comes to the Mexico City weekend. But 18th is his highest finish on an oval in the NASCAR Cup Series. It's a big deal because I have said that I thought that he would be someone who we all knew why he was here and what he was to do was to win at road courses or the street circuits and make his way into the playoffs that way. But here's the thing. It won't be this season from how low he is in the points. But maybe if he starts to be able to be consistent, maybe move his way up to top 15, average more top 10s throughout the season, this is someone who will be able to make an argument next season to point his way in. But like I've said, we have a lot more road courses left, and there's a reason why he's a favorite heading into the one this weekend. The other 2 I want to touch on, Zane Smith, Eric Jones. 2 different manufacturers, 2 different teams in front row and in the Legacy Motor Club. But Eric Jones, another day, another top 15 for Legacy Motor Club. I was going to put top 10, but he finished 11th. But regardless, a good, productive day from Eric Jones. And the Legacy Motor Club team has been aggressive. They're kind of doing their own thing apart from the Joe Gibbs Racing and 2311 teams, and they're sticking to their own guns here. And it's nice to see that they're able to produce what they're wanting to produce. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on was the RFK Racing drivers. They're highlighted in blue. Chris Buescher 2nd, Ryan Preece 9th, Brad Keselowski 10th. Those 3 have gotten the top 10 this season for the first time as a trio, and it's also the first time since 2016 that an RFK team, to where all 3 teams have made it on to the top 10 finishing positions. But moving on to the back half of the results, this is where the notable names start to stick out. Obviously, you see William Byron and Carson Hocevar. William Byron led 93 laps, had another great performance, and it's kind of getting to a point to where I have a feeling we're going to start expecting him. We've seen it basically starting from Darlington moving forward, but William Byron is at a point to where he's not able to finish the race, but boy, is he dominating it until about 20 laps to go. He's able to stay up front, but once that car gets in the dirty air, once it has to deal with traffic, it just seems to have problems. But this weekend was different. Fuel mileage, name of the game. That was the reason for Carson Hocevar, but he had a left rear go down on him. Luckily, didn't wreck. He was able to get it on pit road with roughly 10, 15 laps to go. But it was Byron versus Hamlin. Hamlin was the one who was able to save enough fuel, and it was Hamlin who won. Byron fell down to 28th, Hocevar 29th. I keep talking about Hocevar. I feel like the whole world's talking about Carson Hocevar if you're following NASCAR, and it's for good reason. He's going to end up winning soon, and I keep saying it every weekend. I just don't know when, but it's coming soon. And in the equipment that he's racing in, it's shocking to see how fast he's doing, how aggressive he's being. And while he's ruffled up some feathers, he's also being a grown-up about it. It seemed that him and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. patched things up as well. Alex Bowman now, bottom of the list the past 2 weekends. He has earned 2 points. Alex Bowman is struggling, and that's where I want to touch on with this in the playoff standings. There in the playoff standings, you now have Alex Bowman plus 15 points above the cutoff line. This was someone who at one point looked to be the driver that would be above maybe Tyler Reddick or Chase Elliott and just his consistency, but it's not played out that way. He's someone that just has not been able to find good results, and that's been a struggle for him. But you see the list here. Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, they're two of the drivers that I would just go ahead and say, as long as their seasons don't just fall apart, they're most likely locked in. Same thing goes for maybe Bubba Wallace. Like I said, he was someone who was drifting towards the bottom of the cutoff line, but he's now putting back to decent results. And with a road course coming up, he's not been the best at him, but he's shown that he has a consistent, maybe top 15 day there. Now, the drivers in red, and then Ryan Preece as well. Ryan Preece and Kyle Busch are tied, but as you can see, Preece is ahead of Kyle Busch in the driver's standings. Carson Hocevar 18th, which it's odd to say because if Carson Hocevar did not have the mentality of just wanting to win every weekend, not caring about the future results, Hocevar would be in the playoffs if he would have just laid back. He would be in the playoffs as of right now if he just laid back and just said, all right, I'll hang on, maybe finish 4th or 5th on the day. And then you got AJ Allmendinger, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And one of those drivers is a driver that I'm kind of looking forward to this weekend, AJ Allmendinger, but I'll touch on that here shortly. I now want to be able to bring on our guest. I just want to make sure he's available here. All good. All right. So we have Wally Dallenbach Jr. joining us. Wally, I want to thank you for joining. And I want to start off by just congratulating you on your Hall of Fame induction into the Pro-Am Hall of Fame. I just want to get your overall thoughts on that to begin with.
It's pretty humbling, for Trans Am to do that. The series has been around since the 60s. And if you look at a lot of the drivers that have come out of the Trans Am series, it's a who's who. So, to be inducted, especially in the first round, it was a cool thing to be a part of, and being there at Sebring with all these guys that I used to race with or I drove for, or I was connected with all of them somehow, or my family was. It was a pretty special deal. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
So obviously brought you on more so for your NASCAR side of things. Your NASCAR career was just a lot of ups and downs, it seemed. But the first thing I wanted to start off with was just more so I was impressed with was you were one of the first drivers not with the last name Petty to drive for Petty Motorsports. What was that like? Because that was one of your first seasons racing stock car. What was that like taking on that role in the NASCAR Cup Series?
It wasn't as tough for me as I think it maybe was for other people. I mean, prior to that, I drove for Roush, for 2 years, and then came in, and I think there was a big transition there at Petty, Motorsports, and it was a little, it was a little bit difficult just because, Richard was doing this for so long and he was the man. And, now that you're sticking another driver in there and you're trying to figure out what this driver likes and what his feels are, which, we're all different when it comes to race cars. But obviously, being able to drive for Richard and Penny Motorsports was an honor. It's one of the biggest names in stock car racing. So, we didn't have all that great of success, but I learned a lot and have a lot of respect for them.
So you talk about the respect for them, but one of the things I have a respect for, and I'm sure you do too, are drivers that are able to race in multiple forms of racing and excel at it. That was something that you did in your career. Was there any type of difficulty of going from a different car week in, week out, or maybe even a season to a different season? How was that like as just a racer or a driver?
Not really. I think when you're a racer, you adapt. And you're right. I mean, all the cars are different. I mean, you go from a stock car to an Indy car or whatever. Anybody that's done that will tell you it's a different animal. But it's got four tires, and you drive it to the edge, and you got to find out where that edge is until it starts sliding and hang on. But I have been very fortunate to where I've driven just about everything you could race. And I had, very fortunate career that I was able to do so many cool things in race cars. I think sometimes when you do two different things on the same weekend, that you have to keep that in mind because if you're running an Xfinity car and a Cup car or whatever, those cars are different, and it takes. But when drivers that have do this and have so much experience, they adapt pretty quick. I mean, a lap or two and you're back in the groove.
Are there any drivers, I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but are there any drivers as of now that kind of stand out to you from even the Cup Series down to maybe even the Truck Series that kind of do that same thing of maybe driving in NASCAR, but also dirt racing, maybe even sports cars or things like that?
A lot of them do it, and a lot of them do it because they love it. I mean, you see a lot of these guys that are, they'll go run late model races if they have an off weekend, or they'll run dirt cars or whatever. I think you see a lot of that more than what we saw in the past, or even when I was driving. I mean, you had a lot of drivers that were doing double duty with, which was then the Busch Series or the Xfinity Series. Now they weren't so much jumping around doing other things. There's a few guys like Schrader. I mean, Schrader will race 7 nights a week or 7 days a week if he's got a chance. But there was a time there when we were driving Cup, you weren't allowed to do anything else. The owners were afraid of you getting hurt doing something else in a dirt car or anything like that. And that would screw up the whole season really for the rest of the team. So there was a time there that, that wasn't allowed. I think when guys came in, like Kyle Larson and some of these guys, Stewart and some of these guys, they had such a passion for their dirt racing and stuff like that. And they talked their car owners into doing it. And I think it's good. I mean, I think, the pressures of NASCAR when you're in that series are tremendous. And if you can break away from that and go do something else and have a little fun, and it takes the pressure off, I don't think that's a bad thing at all when you come back to do the Cup races.
Well, one of the things that I was just touching on before you joined was the Michigan race weekend. Something that I was wanting to wait to just ask you about was the type of track that Michigan is. It's a fast track. It's built to be fast. Do you think NASCAR should look into maybe adding more tracks like Chicagoland back to the circuit, or instead of destroying Auto Club, maybe they could have brought Fontana instead of doing what they did to that as well?
I don't know. I always like the faster racetracks. I mean, the faster the better. Michigan is one of the funnest race tracks that you'll race on as a driver because there's so much room. I mean, you can search. There's 4 lanes, and you can search on what your car is going to run. You don't have a lot of racetracks like Michigan. Atlanta a little bit. Of course, places like Talladega and Daytona are different. But I love the racing at Michigan, and those fast racetracks I think are great. I think the road courses put on the best show, but I like the super speedways.
Well, I mean, you say they put on the best show. They're going to a road course this weekend. And it's an international race. The logistics have been long. They had to do the hauler swap out at Michigan. How do you feel about NASCAR maybe trying to reach an international audience, especially in time where they're trying to regrow the sport?
Well, I raced in Japan probably before you were born, so um, I think it's great. I mean, the races that we did in Japan and Suzuka, we were completely out of our element, and it was, nobody really kind of knew what to expect or what to do. But when we got over there, I mean, we were treated fantastic. The fans were fantastic. They were enthusiastic. I mean, they get a lot of Formula One and stuff like that, but then, they never saw NASCAR up close and personal. So yeah, I think it's good to do it once in a while. Logistically, to do that, to all the equipment and the paperwork and all the stuff that you need to do these races. I mean, obviously Formula One does it every race, but I think it's one of those things where once in a while, I think it's really cool. I think it's a little bit much, especially since, NASCAR races a lot more than Formula One, and, they have a very difficult schedule. And this is a difficult race for logistically, but it's great to get in front of new audiences. And every time they do seem to do something like this, they get a fantastic turnout.
So you talk about the new audiences. We saw them do the Clash out in LA. Do you think NASCAR could maybe benefit more from maybe going to areas where they don't really touch on that much? Maybe going to California instead of focusing on the Sonoma area, maybe going a little bit more south?
I think you can, but I mean, you also have to look at, okay, what races are you going to take away? Who are you going to take a race away from? And a lot of these tracks have been so loyal to NASCAR and vice versa. You take a race away from one of these tracks, and it's financially, it's a big hit for them. So I think, yes, it's good to do, like the Clash and certain venues like that you can do, but a lot of these tracks, they need both those cup races, and it would be really hard to take one away.
Well, I wanted to ask you about your overall thoughts for the Mexico City race. Obviously, it's built for F1. That's how the track's been built. We see NASCAR at COTA. Do you think this could be more of like a COTA race in the aspect of that, or do you think it'll be a more unique style of race like how we see in Chicago?
I really haven't seen any really great pictures of the track. I've seen the track layout, and I look at the track layout, reminds me more of a COTA. It seems to me, I mean, that front straightaway is huge. I think in Pocono. It looks to me like, just looking at the map, you've got three really good passing opportunities, three good braking zones. And, when you go to a road course, that's what you got to have. You got to have at least that many, if not more, places where you can pass. And I think COTA's like that as well. I mean, you've got the straightaway, you got the backstretch, and there's a couple other places you can pull out at the last second under braking. Those are the places on road courses where you're doing most of your passes. It's either, getting into the corner or coming off the corner. So I don't know how, again, since I haven't really seen how wide the track is or what kind of runoffs they have, I can't really say much about it. But the way the layout looks, yeah, I think it could be a good race.
So in your career, you've raced on a lot of road courses. You've won 12 hours at Sebring multiple times, 24 hours at Daytona. Is there a certain win in your career that you look back on and you're just like, wow, this was my favorite win? Or are they all kind of the same to you?
I think they're all the same to me. I think probably my first Trans Am win at Portland in 1985. I think that was kind of like one of those monkey off your backs. The previous season, we ran our own team. It was my sister's boyfriend, and I out of a dually pickup and a trailer. We went Trans Am racing, and then the next year I'm driving for a factory team, and so it was like, okay, I got to do something here, or I'm not going to be making it as a race car driver. So I think the first race at Portland which was Father's Day. It was IndyCar weekend. My family was there. My dad was there. That was, that's one that's like, okay, that started all of this, at least, helping me, put me on the map. But a win's a win. It doesn't matter where you get them. They're all, I think, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday at lunch, and, it's funny. We talked about not just wins, but losses. And it's funny how we'll remember the ones that got away more than we remember the ones that we won. The ones that were so close and something stupid happened, those are the ones that bother you. And the wins, the wins are special, but those are the ones that eat at.
I'm sure. I wanted to end it off by just asking about your career now. You still race. Do you see yourself racing until you just cannot race anymore?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I've got a race at Mid Ohio in a Trans Am car in 2 weeks, and that's it. I'm calling it a day. It's not really because I want to, but and a lot of guys that have driven in my era have the same issue. But I got some parts in my lower back that need to be worked on, and the Trans Am cars are the most physical cars, or at least one of the most physical cars that I've ever driven. There's no driver assist, there's no ABS brakes. They're very rigid, 900 horsepower. They're animals, and you feel it. And so I decided to, make Mid Ohio as kind of my last Trans Am race. There's other things I can do. Like before I even got back into Trans Am a couple of years ago, I was doing some historic stuff, and that was a blast. And those cars aren't as physically demanding as the Trans Am cars, but I love doing it. I've been going to the racetracks all my life, but it's also gotten to the point where, I have been doing this all my life, and it's kind of, once you're in the car, it's great, and you love that, and that's the best part about it. All the other stuff I'm sick of. I'm sick of airplanes. I'm sick of rental cars. I'm sick of, there's after 50 years or 45 years of doing this, it's time for a change. But I've been blessed. I've had a really good career, and I'm able to go out the way I want to go out, which is important to me because sometimes drivers don't. And I wanted to be able to call my exit. So we're just going to go to Mid Ohio. We're going to have a blast. I'm going to enjoy every single lap of driving that Trans Am car for the last time, and sit back and see what comes my way.
Well, Wally, I want to thank you for joining the show. It was great having you on. If you ever want to join, just reach out again. I appreciate it so much. Thank you again for joining.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
That was Wally Dallenbach Jr., Trans Am Hall of Famer, now joining the show. Very insightful. Someone who has a very tenured career. I had to go check him out. Even today, while I was doing research for the show, I'm pretty sure Trans Am just posted a video this morning about his Hall of Fame acceptance and his career in the Trans Am series. Came over to NASCAR in the 90s, raced here, raced in the Cup Series, raced in the then Busch Series, the Xfinity Series as well. So a very storied career, and was also on TNT and on NBC as well on the broadcasting side of things. But I now want to get into the upcoming weekend, Mexico City. Talked about it with him. That was one of my biggest questions, just getting a driver's insight, was how are you viewing the track? And when he said it's more of like a coda, it's more of built in the way that F1 would type a race. That answers a few questions of, well, who could we expect to do well this weekend? So let's go ahead. We don't have any insights on this road course. The only driver I could tell you that's one here that I know for sure was Kyle Busch, and that was in the Xfinity Series in 2009, I believe. And that was before they had even redone the track for F1 racing. But now here's your top 18 drivers when it comes to average finish. Obviously, you've got Chris Buescher, Shane Van Gisbergen, Chase Elliott. Those are your three names that when you think of NASCAR in the moment of road courses, those are the ones that are going to do well. But here's the thing, and the thing that I was looking at, which was shocking to me. and the web page reloaded. Don't know why it did, but it's all good. The driver that I like here a lot, I said I liked him last week, but this week I like him again. It's Chris Buescher at on DraftKings. He sits at plus 1,600 odds to win. And if you look at the numbers here, look at this. You've got him as a 7.9 average finish in the 16 races he has run on road courses. 13 top 10s. That's something else. He's sitting at minus 150 on top 10s right now, so there's some good value there. And he has the one win. Shane Van Gisbergen, and you see it says 0. We remember that he won at Chicago. This is for road courses, not street courses. So Alex Bowman, also his win does not count on here as well. As you see him down in 12th. The drivers that I have highlighted are also drivers that are not locked into the playoffs. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said it's kind of flipping it on its head. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 11, 12, 14, 17, 18. Almost half of the drivers on this list are not locked into the playoffs. So remember this list right here that I showed you about the drivers of, hey, this is your cutoff line. These are the drivers that are in. Do not be surprised if you see AJ Allmendinger next Monday. It says 1 win, and he's above Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick. Don't be surprised if you see Kyle Busch even. I know I said that it was 09, and we've seen how much Kyle Busch has changed as a driver, but this is a weekend that could be very different. Earlier in the show, I mentioned Alex Bowman. You see he's plus 15 here. Alex Bowman, he won at Chicago last season, has 15 races, 6 top 10s. So although he may not win, if he can put together some solid stage finishes, maybe even win a stage, and also finish high up in the race, maybe a top 5, top 10 finish, he could rebound here, and he could bounce back before heading into Pocono. But those are the drivers on this list that are the ones that I'm keeping an eye on. And the drivers that I have not highlighted here, these are the drivers that I think are going to do well. I mean, we remember the battle between Christopher Bell, Kyle Busch, and William Byron at the end of COTA earlier this season. That's why I brought up Kyle Busch's name. But look at those two right here, Christopher Bell, William Byron. Those are the two that are probably going to do well here. And William Byron I've been going back and forth, William Byron, Kyle Larson. Who's the top Hendrick driver? And at this point, it just depends on the weekend. But it seems that William Byron, at least since the summer has started, at least since Amazon Prime has taken over television coverage, which they've done a great job of it, by the way. Finally got to watch my first race on there last weekend. But William Byron seems to be the driver of the coverage right now. Every weekend, he's top 5. He's putting himself up there, making the moves to be the one who's leading races. Christopher Bell won 3 straight earlier this season on 3 different tracks. And he's someone, on 3 different styles of tracks. And he's someone that I'm looking at here as well. So although I mentioned, hey, watch out for these drivers, they could lock themselves in. Don't be surprised if a William Byron goes, hey, I'm going to get my 2nd one here. Or Christopher Bell goes, I'm going to get my 4th one. Look, Ross Chastain, he's the best restarter in the field. And we heard Wally Dallenbach talk about that braking zone off of the front stretch, how long it is. If someone's going to be aggressive and they want to send it in, I would expect Ross Chastain. And we talk about aggression, Carson Hocevar, 5 starts, 1 top 10, 13.4 average finish. I expect him to do well this weekend, but I'm not going to highlight him here. But the final driver I want to touch on when it comes to odds, I mentioned Chris Buescher, but the final driver I want to touch on was AJ Allmendinger at plus 1,200. AJ Allmendinger's here, 10 top 10s, a win, and that's in 16 races. So I really think AJ Allmendinger could lock himself into the playoffs this weekend because of how well he does at these tracks, how well he does at these circuits. And it's a different weekend. You're in a whole different country. It's an international race. Daniel Suarez as well. I didn't really touch on him, and I feel like I should before I close it off here. Remember, he won at Sonoma, but he has struggled. He's had back-to-back 30, below 30th place finishes. He's just struggled, and this season has not been any better. But like I've said, and as everyone else says, this is the point in the season where it's just about winning. If you're a driver like Brad Keselowski, you know you're not going to be able to just point your way in. Shane Van Gisbergen, the same way. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope you guys enjoy the races this weekend. Saturday is the Xfinity and Sunday is the Cup. And I want to thank you guys for joining me today. I also want to thank Wally Dallenbach Jr. for joining the show as well. But you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday evening. Thank you so much.